Hello and welcome to the show. This week's FailRace versus the community, we were to go racing cycled production, which means everyone using identical, completely stock cars. Our first race was at the Bugatti circuit in the pouring rain, and the replays really don't do the spray justice. When you are actually racing in these, it is so difficult to see these low curbs around the track, especially when you're in the midst of this group. You know, they're 2 and 3 wide up ahead of you. The visibility is just utterly shocking. This red car, though, that we are following here at the moment did a fantastic job of getting through the pack off the start line. I made up a few places, but yeah, I just couldn't do anything about the red car as everybody files through the next corner. The weather conditions certainly were making this one a bit of a challenge. These cars, of course, being relatively powerful front-wheel drive, were not necessarily the easiest to drive. A fair bit of understeer was going on. This was another corner, actually, that you just couldn't see the curbs if you were following a car ahead of you closely. Very tough to judge quite where anything was. The purple vehicle here running a little bit wide out of that chicane would allow the opportunity for the black car. Gets up the inside. Purple car thought about trying to go around the outside. I don't think he can actually get the front of that car turned in well enough to really do anything about it. Does almost stick his nose up the inside through the next corner. Can't quite make it. Now, this first race would feature a quick stop, and a few cars would dive in on lap 1, trying to keep themselves out of trouble at the front, and it relatively quickly became an incredibly long train. As we went on to this second lap, there was a surprisingly long train of Clios strewn across the corners here. Not so much in the way of overtaking going on right as you can see. It's just a solid line of Clios. The red car, though, gradually closing on to a second place, and certainly finding yourself out on the AstroTurf there is not a particularly good idea. Of those vehicles that did pit, this was the battle for, well, kind of the lead of the pitters. This silver car getting a good run down the back straight, but this is a tough place to get an overtake done. It is a very quick corner and not a huge amount of braking, but just a far better run. Gets the silver car to the inside. Black vehicle tries his best to hold it, can't quite make it stick, ends up sort of a little bit across the curb on the inside, can't quite carry the speed out there, and would have to give up the position. But they were still in a relatively good spot overall. Now, the pit lane here was not an easy one to get into. A lot of cars did not quite realise just how slow you had to be going. Now, there should be a tyre bundle out there. For whatever reason, the replay didn't want to load it, but I think about 5 cars ended up in the tyre bundle. 3 of them on this particular lap. It is, there's a little bit of paint swapping as well. It's coming too wide into the pit lane. It was not an easy one to get slowed down for, not helped by a giant puddle on the inside, or a relatively large puddle at least, on the inside. So, yeah, there was a little bit of shenanigans in the pit lane. Back to the lead of the race. The white car was leading, but coming under increasing pressure. I was holding on to third at this stage. I didn't really quite have the pace of the very top cars. The red vehicle here again getting that much better drive down the back straight. Would have to try and go about it the long way, though, coming towards the chicane. The white car does everything he can to defend, does just about defend through the first part, but in trying to defend on the second, ends up running out wide, and you can't get any power down on that AstroTurf. He tries to cut back to the inside. I mentioned about the spray, you just can't quite see where the curb is, misses it completely, lifts out of the throttle so as not to have gained an advantage. I would sneak past. I would be the ever opportunist, spotted a gap, and would go for it, put me up into a second place. The red car would have the lead. I would then promptly dive into the pits, and it was always going to be close between me and the silver car. As I left the pit lane, we were side by side, but the silver car has the inside, is good under brakes into this first sort of tight section, would get it alongside. I kind of tried to fend him off. You can just get much better drive out of the corner. I was on a little too tighter a line. Still trying to fight the point, but I didn't quite have the pace. I sort of tried sneaking up the inside. This is a really tough corner to get an overtake done. The way the track sort of falls away from you as all three of us behind him run wide, try to push our cars a little bit too hard. Now, you might have seen the background. That last shot, there was a big group of cars fighting for position. A few of those that ended up in the tyre bundle were trying to recover back through the field, and the rest of them had all kind of come out rather close to each other and all looking for ways past. Black and orange car on the outside through this section. That's a pretty good pass, actually, to get your car around there. The blue vehicle, though, isn't giving up. Through the next corner, it's going to be a little bit too far back. It's not a particularly big braking zone. There's also a horrible puddle on the inside. You can't really have a dive, and taking that compromised line costs the blue car a position. The black vehicle was also a little bit wide. I think he was trying to slightly defend his position, and in doing so, outbraked himself as well. He was a little bit wide. The white car had got good speed coming onto the start-finish straight, but didn't quite maintain it as three cars would run through this first corner, all in very, very close proximity. There's a little bit of a wobble going on as we break into this turn two. The white cars around the outside, but they can't quite all fit in the end. Both the white and black car end up out wide, and the blue vehicle would profit. It was all rather busy. Now, the big question was always going to be, where would the red car filter out into this battle? He had been leading the race, however, had lost time to the silver car. The silver car would take the lead. I would squeeze past. There was just about a Clio's width of a gap, and having had a good outlap, I was determined to throw my car up the inside, and I would indeed get the second place. However, the leader was pulling a bit away from me, and there was nothing I could really do about catching that vehicle. It was more about kind of worrying about the cars behind. As you can see, it was all relatively close, though, in this front group. As I said, though, absolutely nothing I could do about the leader. The silver Clio would go on to take victory, having pitted on lap one, got himself in some nice clean air, could run without trouble, while the rest of us were fighting and would make the most of the pit stops to take the victory. Race number two, we would head to the Road America West alternate layout with some Volvo S60s. Certainly they weren't to everyone's taste. I actually quite like these cars. I thought they were quite nice to drive, but a lot of people weren't massive fans of the relatively high amount of understeer. Also, they don't really quite get stopped like the lightened race vehicles we tend to race do. In standard guys, they don't have the best brakes of all time. Certainly did catch a few people out. Forza have been very, very kind to me with my recent grid positions. Again, I found myself relatively close towards the front. It's around the outside of the black Volvo there. That's yeah, not quite a move that I expected to pull off, but that's such a good run off the turn, I figured I might as well give it a try. Looking for a way past the white car as well. There just wasn't quite the space at that part of the track. We are all, though, running very, very close, as you often do on these opening laps. Again, I'm still stuck trying to go around the outside. The white car was doing a good job of defending his position. Couldn't quite get it done, but I did stay alongside as we run through the next high-speed turn. That puts me to the preferred line, but I still can't get the move completed. And this is one of the difficulties you can sometimes have when driving identical cars, trying to get passes done cleanly, trying to get overtakes done when your cars have identical brakes. You've got to be, well, considerably braver and hope that the other person is braking a little bit early, because yeah, otherwise trying to get passes done can be really rather difficult. And of course, you don't have any extra grip to be going around the outside of somebody. This was a fantastic little battle going on further back. The pink car trying to make his way up through the field, was running very quickly, but just couldn't get past the cars around him. As I said, it is sometimes incredibly tough. While the Clio's in the wet, it was a little bit easier to find ways past. You're a little bit more likely to make mistakes, perhaps. With these, yeah, it was certainly proving to be a real challenge, finding ways past. The blue car up ahead got himself to the inside and stayed there while the black vehicle tried to fight the point in the end, just couldn't quite hold it. Trying to go around the outside of that final turn is a rather difficult manoeuvre to get done, and in being stuck out wide, it allowed the pink car to draw alongside, and he would get the move done. A good move through that opening, very tight chicane. The blue and white car had then got a wheel on the grass, slowed himself down on the run down this fastest part of the track, the only really long straight on this circuit for the pink car to have a dive up the inside. They run so close to one another, but still the move isn't quite done. The blue car is on the inside for the next turn as they continue to go too wide, but as the track continues to change direction, it keeps favouring a different car each corner. Once more, pink vehicle is to the inside here, but sometimes when you take these tighter lines, you can be a little bit slow off the corner, and once more, they're going side by side to another turn, this time slightly favouring the blue car as they're both going to run. Again, we're talking millimetres between the two cars, almost being run out onto the grass. They get away with it. The blue car goes for a cutback through, again, that's one of the fast turns on the track. It's a great cutback to be done. The pink car just not quite brave enough under brakes, can't throw it back up the inside, and would eventually have to concede that position wasn't quite going to be his on that lap. There was a great battle going on at the front, sort of a four-way battle for the lead. I was struggling to find a way past the blue car ahead of me. I was quicker over the course of the lap, but as I mentioned, when you're in identical cars, trying to find that place to get a move done was proving to be a little bit difficult. I just wasn't quite confident enough under braking to have a big dive. I'd already seen a few cars have issues there, a few cars go off, and I didn't want to do something too stupid because, well, there were two cars behind me ready to take any positions away from me, and through the rest of the track, blue car was doing a very, very good job of defending. And I couldn't find an opening to get a pass done. I just continued to put pressure onto him, and at occasions have to defend from the vehicle behind. There was a fair bit of action going on throughout the field in this one. Two of the black Volvos were having a good fight further back, again running just a few millimetres away from each other's bumpers. This one of the more difficult overtake manoeuvres around the outside of the hairpin. As I said, in identical cars, going around the outside of somebody is not easy. It's a very, very good move. If you can sort of get it around the outside, you will, of course, have the preferred line into this final turn. And it is one of the... if you can get to the inside of that final turn, that's probably one of the better spots to make a pass stick with identical vehicles around here. So yeah, a very, very solid overtake. At the front, the white car would make a mistake and drop further back. We would sort of, depending on who had a good lap, sometimes the gaps would increase, sometimes they would decrease. At this stage, there was a little bit more space between us, but I was very fast through the opening section and would close up massively to the back of the leader. And this time around, finally, the pressure would work as he tried to put too much power down on the exit, would end up out on the grass. It doesn't end up in the tyre bundles. The tyre bundles there can be rather nasty, and you can get in a fair bit of trouble for clipping them. It doesn't end up in the tyre bundles, but just is slowed down enough, just can't get out of the corner quick enough, and that would make for a relatively simple pass in the end for me. I do go a little bit deep into the next corner. I was worried about him having a dive, and I braked pretty late through there. But yeah, perseverance and just keeping applying pressure throughout the race would finally pay off for me. Further back in the field, there was continuing to be battles through this race. The car ahead struggling with some oversteer through this very long final corner. If you got it wrong with the Volvos, you knew about it. You really knew about getting things wrong with these cars. They were a little bit, well, fair bit naturally understeery. So yeah, make little errors and you were in trouble. And that is a great pass. It's a fantastic pass for position there from the Valvoline car. It all stems from that one error, trying to carry too much speed through the long final corner. Makes you a little bit slow going towards the first corner, and it gave the vehicle behind an opportunity. at the front, and while I didn't pull out a massive margin in the remaining few laps, I would go on to take victory in this race number 2. Blue Volvo coming home in second, the purple car still relatively close in third. It was a hell of a race, this one. Thoroughly enjoyed this particular race. The closest of finishes, though, would go to the pink Volvo, involved in battles for a fair amount of this race, was closing up to the back of, I think it was 5th place ahead of him as they round the final corner. I don't know what the car ahead did. It got such a poor run out of the last turn. The pink car's absolutely flying along and draws up alongside the driver tires and then crash into one another. It was very, very close, but a little bit too late for the pink car. Maybe 10 meters down the road to the finish line, maybe the pink car would have had it. We know that Forza track sort of where the front wheel crosses the line is when the car counts as finished. So yeah, the blue car does take victory in that little battle, not by a huge amount though. On to the final race, we would head to the Watkins Glen circuit with the Ferrari 355, a car that I really quite like, but not everyone is a fan of it. To be fair, it can get a little bit twitchy if you get things wrong, especially if you aren't braking the car in a straight line, and a few cars found that out. At turn 1, I get a little bit of a bump through the S's as well after getting quite a slide going on with my vehicle. Yeah, it's if you overstep the mark with this car, it is not particularly forgiving. If you keep it on the mark, I think it's a really rather nice car to drive. I once again found myself with a relatively nice grid spot and could get to the lead early on. This silver car would learn just how much of a pain the Ferrari can be, just bouncing across the curbs at the bus stop there. Yeah, you kind of overstep the mark with the Ferrari. You're going to have some slightly twitchy sideways moments. The silver car losing one position, just about keeping the second one at bay there. Now, it wouldn't take long for the field to spread out in this. Sadly, a few cars broken through various incidents, and just in general being slightly more uncooperative cars to drive for some people would lead to a rather spread out field. For the early stages of the race, this was the closest group on a track running together. There wasn't a huge amount in the way of overtaking going on. There was this group sort of following one another, and then everyone else was kind of a little bit spread out and often on their road. A few cars having to take trips through the pit lane. Purple car here just slightly unable to get close enough to really affect anything on the vehicle ahead. And Watkins isn't the easiest track to overtake on either, with being, well, a really rather quick circuit. There are not very much in the way of large braking zones. Although, speaking of braking zones, one of your best opportunities is down into turn 1, and we see what happens when you don't get the car stopped in a straight line. The red vehicle up ahead started to try and make the corner while still under brakes and just loses the back end. And when you do that, you lose a fair amount of time, although the camo car gets a big slide coming up through the S as the red car has to lift, realizes the gap is going to evaporate. Yeah, when you get that slide, while he does a great job of keeping it on the track, the red car, you lose so much momentum going towards the S's that the camo car, despite not having been particularly close, would find a way past. As the race progressed, this group did bunch up a little bit. Third place, the black Ferrari, was starting to come under pressure from the red vehicle, while me and second were gradually vanishing up off the road. Now, I said turn 1 is probably one of your better spots for overtaking. However, the red Ferrari here gets a mega run off the second to last corner, actually gets up the inside, gets the pass done before they ever get to the final turn. That is a very, very good overtake. The purple car is also keen to make the most of it. As I said with the Volvos, you saw with the Volvos, when one car finds a way past, if your vehicle ends up, out of position, stuck on that wider line, another car is going to try and fill that gap if they are close enough, and sure enough, the purple car would take advantage. The black Ferrari would get the car sideways in the braking zone, does gather it up before hitting a wall, but yeah, turn 1 was proving to be a little bit tricky. We did have the battle of the broken. The Ferraris not quite so damaged that they really needed to go to the pit lane, but still suffering a little bit with their cars, as this dark blue Ferrari was looking for a way past the car ahead. They were very, very close on the way out of that always seemingly never-ending turn down towards this penultimate corner. The dark blue car being forced to try and go around the outside there. Can't quite make it work as the light blue car would run out of grip, very nearly making it 3 wide through there. It's always scary going 3 wide at this track, let alone when you've got slightly poorly cars. Still, the red car is determined to defend his position. This may well have been over about 15th, 16th place, but you still fight for every position. The blue car thinks about trying to go for a dive up the inside. He can't quite do it though. He's too far back. The camo car gets himself in trouble. Again, it's the brakes. It's trying to get the car slowed down for turn 1 that was causing issues at the front, and I had a relatively relaxing drive for a large part of the race, although in the closing stages the pink car behind me was gradually catching, and yeah, towards the end of the race I was being put under more and more pressure. However, as we came up to cross the line, the vehicle behind just ran out of time to do anything about my Ferraris. I would take victory number 2 in this session. A relatively straightforward race for me in this. The closest of finishes would go to this group because, well, they were the only group that were really running close on track towards the end. This red car trying to make a last-ditch pass on the purple car ahead, gets a very, very good run out of the final turn, but can't quite do enough with it, as he would just not have the acceleration. And when you're driving identical cars, it is quite tough to have the acceleration. You've got to have a really good run and your opponent have a really poor run to make that sort of manoeuvre stick. Yeah, the Ferraris didn't quite work to plan. A little bit of a shame. As I said, I like the 355, but certainly not to everyone's driving style, if you like. The Volvos were quite entertaining, as were the Clios. Never really go wrong with Clio racing. Even in the wet at a difficult track, they were still really rather entertaining. However, that is going to be it for this week's Versus the Community. The next one shall be held on Thursday, the 4th of August. We are going to be going racing with B-Class Audis. If you want to sign up and take part in that, then you can via our forums. There'll be a link in the description. Find the FailRace Versus the Community section, and you can sign up in there. But that's going to be it from me. Thank you very much for watching, and until next time, goodbye.